What is going on, all you PC enthusiasts? JayzTwoCents here, and if I sound a little raspier than normal, well, that's because Jay's got bronchitis. Again. It's like CES all over again. But damn it, I wasn't gonna let that stop me from bringing you these videos because I'm just that dedicated. Now obviously all the buzz in the PC realm right now is the fact that Haswell E and Intel's first 8-core 16-thread processor has been launched. And I actually have it right here. Drove all the way down to Micro Center to pick this bad boy up. We did a vlog on that. Hopefully you guys watched it because, you know, Coconut Monkey and I, we like to get into little shenanigans. But anyway, I get a lot of questions now, people saying, what are you gonna be putting in for a motherboard? Well guys, I was actually so impressed with the Z97 classified from EVGA. We are going to stick with the classified series and we're going with the classified X99 in Skunkworks. Now, I know some of you are already like,
Really? Really, Jay? You're upgrading to X99 from Z97? What the hell, man? You just built that.
I know, I just built it, but you gotta look at it from my perspective. I play very little games and I do an awful lot of content creation, I do an awful lot of rendering. My computer spends more time rendering than doing anything else, so any time that I can save by throwing more horsepower at it is a benefit to me. All right, so we're not gonna really do a full review of this motherboard in this video. We're gonna more or less do an unboxing and see what the X99 classified looks like, what it has inside of, in terms of features, and we'll do a full overclocking review of both the 8-core and then the feature set of the X99 classified from EVGA in a later video once the system is finished being put together and whatnot. So I actually don't have a knife, and this thing is sealed up. I'm very unprepared. Look at that, a knife out of nowhere. That's so cool. Anyway, we'll go ahead and cut this beast open, and I just cut the box instead of the tape. If anything, you guys might get some good lulls and fails out of this because, well, like I said, I'm sick. Actually, before we open that up, it's pretty much like very similar to the feature set of what's on the Z97 classified. You got your onboard CPU temperature monitoring, which means the trouble code readout turns into a temperature gauge while the system is actually booted. It's got the EVGA X tuning utility. This is like their overclocking utility. Now, I'm not really a fan of those. And I did like the AI tuning from Asus, so we will give this thing a shot and see how it does, just to, I'm curious to see how well it does. And if you guys hear a barking dog, my dog is actually an AMD fan, so he might be sabotaging this video a little bit. I'm sorry. Now, all the chipsets feature passive cooling on there, no fans or anything like that. They kind of ditched that a long time ago. EVGA easy voltage, easy reading voltage levels with dedicated read points. That's the little harness that plugs in, has all the pigtails on there where you can stick your voltage meters in, get real voltage readings and not trust software. You can't trust software voltage in most cases. Triple BIOS support. Once again, there's 3 BIOS on this, so it's very, very difficult to actually brick this thing. PCIe disable switch, which is kind of nice. If you have multiple graphics cards, which we're going to be doing in this system, 3 GTX 780s actually, if you wanted to individually test cards, maybe to see if a card is failing or do individual overclocking per card, you can actually move the switches on the PCI lanes or PCIe lanes and only activate the card that you want active, and then when you're done, you can activate them all. So that's kind of nice. It's also nice for a test bench if you want to put 3 different graphics cards in there, maybe do bench testing between the 3. You can switch between them, between reboots, and then you can more quickly actually get through those graphics cards. 100% solid state capacitors. That's nice, but that's kind of the norm now, so it's not really a huge selling point anymore. 150% more gold content in the CPU socket itself, and a 10-phase PWM for clean power delivery. Now, what this thing does kind of lack, unfortunately, is any real fan control software. The Z97 is the same way. EVGA hasn't really invested much in terms of the software for fan control or fan suite. I think that's a big deal. I'd really like to see EVGA start incorporating some sort of fan control into their motherboards, because I think that's where there's going to start being a bigger gap between EVGA and other motherboard manufacturers, is they're the only brand that really doesn't offer you a fan tuning suite. And that's a big deal, in my opinion. And the only header that actually gives you full tuning control in terms of temperature is the CPU2 header, where the CPU1 and whatnot are PWM control only. So I'd like to see full DC and PWM control on all headers which I think would then make this compete with a lot of the other brands that are already on the market. Now, that's just my opinion. That's what I look for in motherboards. Unfortunately, this doesn't have it, but I run very slow speed fans anyway, so it's not, the system's not too noisy. Now, it does support up to 128 gigabytes of GDDR4. That's right, X99 does use GDDR4, and it's 2667 megahertz plus OC on the RAM, and the 2667 megahertz plus. I guess that means this thing may not be supporting 3000 out of the box. I know there's an updated BIOS for this thing already, which supports 2800 and up. I don't know where the up stops at. Like Kingston HyperX already has 3000 megahertz DIMM modules out for GDDR4. I don't know if those are compatible with this, but EVGA over time will continue to do memory validation. Obviously, when you're an early adopter on a brand new platform, you may run into some compatibility issues, which I'm already anticipating may happen in this build. Now, moving on to more of the key features, we do have onboard power reset and all that stuff. EVGA Elite X tuning, we've already said, triple BIOS. The box on here actually says 300% increased gold content. It's actually 150%. That was a misprint on there. It does have 2 times 8-pin CPU power, so if you were doing extreme like LN2 overclocking or whatever, you have very clean power delivery on there. And then it does also have 2 M.2 both Type 2 and Type 3 sockets on here. One is located right here, actually. We'll look at it on the board, but one is on the right above the sound card portion of the board, and then the other one is actually in between the graphics cards. It's 8-layer PCB, very durable, etc., etc. Now, this is a 2011, but it's a 2011 V3 socket. Sorry, that's a very annoying sound. And what that means is all of your old 2011 CPUs are not going to fit on this board. The notches and the pin layout is actually slightly different. Now, one of the things I really do like about the EVGA boards is the amount of accessories they actually give you with this. I still don't really understand, though, why they split out their manual into 2 books, part 1 and part 2. Maybe they should just do 1 book. I don't know. They're both English, so I don't get that, but whatever. So here is your 4-way SLI bridge, because this does natively support 4-way SLI on the chipset, or excuse me, on the socket PCIe lanes if you are going with the 8-core, and I believe the 5930K also natively supports 4-way. I could be wrong. It's still really new and I'm not entirely sure, so if I'm wrong, go ahead and feel free to correct me down in the comments. We have a 3-way PCI bridge, and then of course you have your normal, or SLI bridge, of course you have your normal SLI. All the normal accessories like what came with the Z97, the cover for the IO shield, your readouts, black SATA cables, lots and lots of accessories. I mean, look at all these accessories they give you. Accessory for 3.0 IO shield, SLI, temperature probes. I mean, they give you so much stuff. That's what's so cool. And lots of SATA cables. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the motherboard itself, because after all, this is the beauty and the whole reason we're here today. Now, this is the EVGA classified X99, and it pretty much comes with all the classified features you'd come to expect from EVGA. 2011 socket, like we mentioned, V3. It's got 8 DIMM slots on here, so for a quad channel, up to 128 gigabytes of GDDR4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 PCI Express. Now, that also gives you a true 2 times 16x or a 4 times 8x PCI 3.0, depending on your configuration on here. And you do get one PCIe 4x right there. Auxiliary 6-pin power slot on the bottom for your PCI Express lanes. If you're going with like 4-way SLI hydraulic cards, you want to be able to keep the power current on there. Here's your M.2 slot right there. Here's another M.2 right here. It's got really attractive heat sinks on here. I really like the way that these look. I like the gunmetal look right here. It's got X99. I mean, it looks fantastic. It's got the same 90-degree 24-pin or 20 plus 4-pin right here. You've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 SATA. What I like on here is that the SATA is actually marked. You can see which SATA is actually what on here. Makes it much easier to actually figure out, where things should be getting plugged in. Fan headers all around the motherboard. Here's all your PCI Express dip switches I mentioned right there. Turbo button. I'm not sure exactly what turbo button does. We'll figure that one out. Clear CMOS on the front. Also a clear CMOS on the back. You've got 2, 4, 6 PCI Express 2.0, 2, 4 PCI Express 3.0 on the back. A dual Intel Ethernet NIC card right here, and a 7.1 surround audio on the back. All the solid caps we've already talked about. I wish the caps were black and they weren't this kind of a blaring silver color, but anyway, I digress. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. And how many of you guys can actually point out the elephant in the room? And please don't say Jay. I mean, that's a given. That, to me, would be this guy right here. Now, the Z97 Classified was the most beautiful motherboard EVGA has ever made. And do you know what made it the most beautiful motherboard they ever made? The crowd said, give us an option that doesn't include red. And they did. And it was glorious, and it's in Skunkworks. And then the X99, they said, screw you, we're putting red back on everything. So they put the red E right here. So what does that mean for me? Well, it actually adds more work for me to either make this a gunmetal color or black or yellow or whatever I'm gonna do with it. And these are like aluminum or aluminium or wherever you are, inserts on here that are sub-terrained, I don't know what you would call it. They're actually below the surface of the top of the heatsink, so I can't even get like a needle down in there to try and pry them up. And even if I did, I'm afraid they might bend because one, they're aluminum, and two, they are adhesive down, and they're adhesive with something that's gonna be anti-heat, it's gonna be anti-heat resistant because they would come delaminated as the heatsink heats up. So I have no idea how I'm gonna get them out to paint them or what I'm gonna do. But what really upsets me is the fact that they put on the For the Win Edition motherboard a gray E. The gray E would have gone perfect on this motherboard, and I'm unfortunately gonna dock EVGA a ton of style points for this because this, I think, is gonna create a little bit of a public outcry. That's my opinion on that. When it comes to the PCI Express 3.0, I find it kind of interesting that the 3.0 on the bottom here points straight down, but the 2.0 next to it points up. So you have kind of a funky arrangement of cables there. This kind of looks like an afterthought to me, like maybe they should have made the 2.0 also point down or make the 3.0 point up. At least make a match, because that would make it difficult to actually get clean wiring. Well guys, this has been just kind of an unboxing and an overview here of the brand new EVGA X99 Classified. And when I'm done with this video, I'm actually going to move right on in to doing my swap in my system and adding my third 780. That's actually right here in all of its beautiful glory. The third guy right here with the EK water block. 3 of those bad boys on there is just gonna look awesome. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get off this camera now. We're gonna start this build. And first things first, I gotta figure out what the heck I'm gonna do with that after I bench test this thing to make sure that it's not dead on arrival. Because if it is dead on arrival, well then my entire project at the moment will be dead on arrival. All right guys, I'm gonna get on out of here. It's JayzTwoCents. Follow on Twitter if you guys would like to interact with me. I'm very active on Twitter. It's kind of where I'm at. I like the 140 character limit. Short messages are good. But with that said, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get the heck on out of here. As always, hope to see you in the next one.
I got smoked sausage. You like the smoked Oh, you know me.
I like how all of a sudden we look like we're in a
It's like in a tray, it's like case labs or hot dogs. It just lights out.